we have Dr. Sajid Chaudhry today, who is a reader from Aston Business School and reading finance, I have to say. And actually, Sajid is not new to global to our center probably, because you worked in Birmingham Business School, and you also worked in I think the School of Management at the Swansea University before you joined Aston Business School in 2018. And Sajid obtained a PhD in banking and finance from Maastricht University. I just exchanged some experience because I got my PhD from Groningen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So from the Netherlands. And I think his research interest is on finance, financial stability, bank taxation, green finance, green banking, and fintech, etc., etc. All those very up-to-date topics. And Sajid is currently an associate editor of a journal. I think many people know this journal, International Journal of Finance and Economics. And he has also published in the journals such as the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization, which is a very good one, Energy Economics, and the Journal of International Money and Finance, among others. I emphasize among others. So, Jaideep, I understand that you are the only a long presenter today. So you are going to talk about a very big topic. And when you are ready, I leave you, because I'm very curious myself to know what the paper is about. And I have to warn you, we have a lot of colleagues who are interested in this area. So let's see whether we can have some very good constructive discussion. Sajid, please take over the floor.
Thank you, Professor Hongbo, for the introduction, and thank you to you and to Mark for inviting me to this online seminar. So it's not my first time to present in seminar series, so I really look forward to the comments. I remember last time was very good conversation, good comments, and very relaxed environment. So I really look forward to the comments. This is a quite broad topic, and which we are trying to really consolidate in terms of providing some new evidence on this topic. So this is a joint work with my colleagues from Kiel University, Chiu-Wei Chen, University of Leeds, Associate Professor Mohammad Ali Nasser, and then another colleague from the University of Bath. So what is this topic about? It's about climate risk governance and firm value. And we use like global data to discuss this this topic. So scientists tell us basically that climate change is a formidable challenge with far-reaching implications for global businesses. And societal awareness of environmental issues have brought climate risk management to the forefront of corporate governance. Another element of this broad element of corporate governance is basically that how can we tackle this climate risk problem? And one of the important things which come to mind is that we can do some better governance. So here we refer to climate risk governance practices as strategies, policies, and frameworks that organizations implement to manage and mitigate the risks which evolve from this climate change. So these practices are essential for enhancing firms' ability to navigate uncertainties, ensure operational resilience, and reduce vulnerabilities to climate disruptions. So basically, there is already research. I cite a few of them, like Chen et al. 2023, Logan and others 2021, and Ren 2008. They look at the importance of governance and risk management. But there are very few studies which basically explore the climate risk governance. So we basically combine climate risk and governance together to come up with a unique way of defining this climate risk governance, and we check the impact of this on the firm value. So basically, we address this gap in the literature, and we also focus on that how firms basically implement these governance strategies to improve risk oversight, disruption management, and adaptive capacity. So we argue that in the growing challenges which we are facing in terms of climate, we were just talking about before the seminar with some colleagues that we have already snow in the UK, especially in the south and the Midlands, which is very unusual. So you don't see any this kind of climate change things in the past. November snow, you don't find any example in the recent past. So there are growing challenges which we are all facing, and of course, firms also face these challenges in the form of physical risk and transition risk. Yeah. So we argue that understanding the role of climate risk governance is important in enhancing firms' risk management capabilities and developing the robust framework that help businesses update, anticipate their problems they face, and which will ultimately lead to increase in the firm value. So how we take this governance of climate risk, we argue that it extends beyond mere compliance with environmental regulations, and it basically includes proactive strategies as defined by Boy and de Villiers 2017, Liu and Tang 2021, policies, Demenk and Ban, Volkoviak, and Galbraith 2010, they basically argue that there are also policies, not only strategies. And Peters and Romy 2014, they say that they are mechanisms. So basically, it's a combination of strategies, policies, and mechanisms that firms need to employ to identify, assess, and manage these climate-related challenges which these firms are facing. And these are not like one-off things. There are a spectrum of activities which are involve integrating climate considerations into corporate decision-making processes to engage stakeholders and implement comprehensive corporate social responsibility, which are aligned with the climate goals. So effective governance is not only mitigates the potential adverse impacts of climate-related disruptions, but also positions firms to harness opportunities arising from a sustainable and environmentally conscious business model. So going forward to what we do in this paper, based on this this motivation, we pose two main research questions. Our first question is that to what extent does the governance of climate risk influence firm value? And then next we ask, how do specific elements of climate risk governance, including management practices, shareholder engagement, and CSR strategies, contribute to or detract from firm value? How do we contribute to the literature? So we have got like three ways which we are contributing to the existing body of literature. As I said before, there's already research on climate risk and on governance. So there is two different strands that look at the impact of climate risk on firm performance, and there's also research looking at the impact of governance on firm performance or firm value. So what we do basically, we combine these together, and we argue that this is climate risk governance is a distinct and crucial factor that research need to seek to provide a more nuanced and detailed understanding of climate risk governance on and its impact on firm value. And we go further deep, and we look into the management practices, shareholder engagement, and corporate social responsibility strategies how do they impact the firm value. So we draw upon a stakeholder theory, which examines how firms manage and engage with various stakeholders to address environmental concerns. So in contrast to the prevalent approaches that treat climate risk awareness as a singular construct with empirical data or conceptual level, our research adopts a more granular perspective. So we dig further deep into the elements of governance. So through these three distinct components, our study unveils the precise contributions of each element to firm value, presenting actionable insights for practitioners and policymakers. So this not only provide the gap, fulfill the gap in the literature, but also provide a detailed analysis that how this integrated relationship mechanism work in the real life. And our third contribution that we not only look at one country, we basically look at cross-country perspective. Particularly, we focus on European versus non-European analysis. Why we do that? Because in terms of like Green Deal and different kind of climate-related and sustainable finance-related directives are more common, or they exist in Europe compared to the non-European countries. Emissions trading system exists in Europe, so we try to separate these two regions to see if there are any differences in these European versus non-European countries. And we look at 66 countries, and our data period is 2004 until 2021. So grounded in the resource-based view, which emphasizes the strategic management of unique resources and capabilities, our study examines how risk management practices, shareholder climate risk engagement, and CSR strategies serve as critical resources for enhancing resilience to climate threats, and that potentially leads to increase in the firm value. So what are the underlying theories? There are two underlying theories that play a role in effective governance of firms. The first one I briefly touched upon. The first one is stakeholder theory, which highlights the importance of stakeholders, which include both the management as well as the shareholders, in achieving the long-term success of firms, and presents that firms are liable to all the stakeholders, not just the shareholders. And this perspective basically aligns with the principles of risk management, which requires incorporating shareholder concerns into decision-making processes to mitigate potential risks and disruptions. This also requires integrating stakeholder concerns into decision-making to mitigate potential risks and disruptions. So this is like stakeholder theory, basically focusing on all the stakeholders instead of just the top management and the shareholders. The second theory is the resource-based view, which posits that each firm has unique resources and capabilities that make it stand out from their competitors and help it improve its performance. So it's based on the resources, not on the stakeholder. So while there is no study analyzing the impact of climate risk governance and its components, we use stakeholder theory to examine how effective climate risk governance practices influence the satisfaction of stakeholders, particularly shareholders. We further analyze how governance decisions align with stakeholder interests and contribute to overall firm value. So we also apply a resource-based view to assess how climate risk governance practices serve as distinctive resources that contribute to the firm's competitive advantage. Moreover, we explore how these governance practices are linked to sustainable value creation and enhanced financial performance. So basically, our idea here is that you can't really distinguish between, you cannot separate out like stakeholder theory from the resource-based view. So they are kind of integrated. If any company has stakeholder-focused view, they of course need to look at what kind of resources they have that they can employ. Employ to achieve that stakeholder focus. So it's a mix of these things. It's not really easy to disentangle. So next is literature review. So it's the quite huge literature around climate risk and firm value, firm risk. So looking at the impact of financial performance, non-financial performance of firms. They're also looking at how the investors behave in terms with respect to the climate risk, how the financial disclosures basically disclose information that can lead to increase the firm value or motivate investors to invest into those particular climate-focused firms. So climate change basically introduces numerous financial and non-financial hazards, which come from physical risks, such as severe weather, regulatory risks from carbon pricing, and transition risks due to changing market conditions. So when the firms transition from non-climate focus to climate focus, there is a risk involved that they have to be in. So Dell, for example, they show that climate variations significantly affect nations' economic performance. And Fried et al. 2015, they show a positive correlation between ESG factors and corporate financial outcomes. On the other hand, Hussain et al. 22 affirmed that CSI initiatives mitigate climate-related risks. So basically, you can find papers which are providing evidence that there is a positive impact of ESG or climate-related factors on financial performance, and there are also papers that say the other way around. By looking at the temperature only, Nordhaus and Burke, they also provide some contradictory evidence. Nordhaus 2006 emphasizes the pivotal role of climate in explaining income disparities between developing and developed nations. Studies reveal an inverse relation between temperature and economic performance. And Burke et al. 2015, they identify temperatures also impact the productivity of firms. So moving on, the traditional research on firm valuation often focuses on corporate social responsibility, investments, and information disclosure. As I said before, so there is a huge body of literature on that. I just mentioned a few of the papers. Eng and Mark 2003, Bubaker and Lebgori 2008, and Galbraith, they suggest that climate risk management practices can enhance firm value. Chaudhry et al. 2020 and Zhu et al. 2002, they indicate that proactive management of climate risks can lead to more informed risk-taking decision, potentially creating value. Similarly, research by Grifo et al. And Cheng et al. Suggests that transparent disclosure of climate risk management strategies can improve a firm's reputation and attract investors, ultimately boosting firm values. It's all about that how transparent and how good firms are in their risk management practices. So there's another view that basically this is the transparency and the disclosure that help increase the firm value rather than anything related to the climate. So this is the contradictory view, which says that it's not about the climate, it's about the transparency and honesty in the disclosures of financial related matters. So moving on from climate risk, focusing on the governance, again, there is a huge literature going back to 2-3 decades that the researchers have been researching on that. And there is a huge research that strong corporate governance practices play a crucial role in enabling companies to effectively tackle climate risks. Research has consistently shown that robust CG practices positively correlate with increased firm value, likely due to factors such as risk reduction, improved capital access, and heightened investor confidence. And then there's also research which focus on basically on the specific corporate governance practices like independent board of directors, strong audit committees, timely and transparent financial information disclosure, safeguarding shareholder rights, and avoiding conflicts of interest. So Bhagat and Bolter and Gompers et al. along with Hermelin and Weisbach, they provide quite detailed analysis on that even the individual factors of CG, they lead to increase in the firm value. And there's also research, for example, by Bose et al. 2022. They observed that a negative association between climate risk incentives for top executives and firm level carbon emissions. So as I explained before, traditional governance focuses on financial risks and investor confidence. Climate risk governance extends this focus. So it ensures a company possesses a clear understanding of its exposure to climate-related threats, such as extreme weather events, regulatory changes, and resource scarcity. Going forward with the governance and firm-related literature, governance practices extend beyond explicit agreements with stakeholders, encompasses implicit responsibilities such as fair employee treatment and continuous service delivery to customers. So it's not only whatever they disclose in their financial statements, it's also going beyond that, how firms basically treat their employees, their customers, and the society in general. So these implicit obligations, when managed effectively, can enhance corporate value by building trust and resilience, as suggested by stakeholder theory in the papers by Cornell and Shapiro 2021 and Pharma 2021. And similar views given by Domenech and Ban-Wolkowiak 2019, focusing only on the resource-based view. So Pharma 2021 applies this contractual approach to stakeholder capitalism and ESG, arguing that implicit contracts between firms and stakeholders are crucial for long-term value creation. Similarly, Cornell and Shapiro 2020 assert that these implicit agreements extend the firm's responsibilities into areas that cannot be easily formalized, emphasizing the need for robust governance to manage such risks. So considering the uncertainties surrounding climate change impacts, effective governance frameworks must incorporate mechanisms to manage both known risks and unexpected challenges. Derbyshire and Evan, they go further and they say that the inclusion of unknowledge in risk assessments helps firms anticipate surprises and improve resilience. So based upon this literature, I explained separate literature on climate risk and governance. So we basically focus on the climate risk governance of firms, as well as going further deep into the climate risk management strategies, shareholder engagement, and CSR strategies. So these are the studies which say that these are all important when it comes to management of climate risks. So we basically formulate the following hypothesis based upon the above literature review. We postulate that the governance of climate risk has a positive impact on the firm value. The climate risk management practices have a positive impact on the firm value, and furthermore, shareholder engagement as well as CSR strategy, they all have a positive impact on the firm value. Okay, so our data and methodology, we use global data from 66 countries. We have got 2,536 firms, and our data period is from 2004 to 2021. And we use data from global Composite Global and Refinitiv database. So going forward with one of the very important things which we basically innovate in this paper is how do you define all these basically the main variables of interest. So our dependent variable is a very standard firm value measure, which is Tobin skew. It is the natural log of market value of equity plus book value of assets minus book value of equity minus balance sheet deferred taxes divided by the book value of assets, and we take the natural log of all of this. And our source of data for this particular variable is Compostat Global. And then we have got climate risk governance. So this is basically the inverse of an environmental score of a firm multiplied by the corporate governance score of that firm. And the data comes from a Refinitiv. So what we do basically, we argue that if you inverse the environmental score of a firm, that becomes a climate risk. And if you multiply that with the corporate governance score of that firm, that basically shows that how effectively those firms are governing their climate risks. So if you give you an example that if a firm environmental score is 1, means that the risk is the highest. So one score mean that environmental score is very low. That firm will have very low, very high risks. So 1 divided by and if the governance score is basically so 1 divided by 100, which is the inverse of the environmental score, will be 0.01 as the climate risk of that firm. And if you multiply it with a firm that has 70 governance, it will become 0.07. So say on the other hand, if a firm has very high environmental score, it means that they do not have any risk. So their inverse of 100 will become 1, right? And the same firm, if that firm has 0.07 of corporate governance score, that will also have 0.07. So what I'm trying to say here that if a firm has a very high risk and very low governance, is the same as a firm which has very low climate risk and very high governance. So we treat those firms in our definition as the same. So this is basically, one of the main things, innovations in this paper we have got. And I look forward to your comments on this measure in the comment section. So if we do the similar thing, so we go further into the governance elements. Next one is the management score. So we take the inverse of the environmental score of a firm and multiply it by the management score of that firm. And what does that management score include? It measures a company's commitment and effectiveness towards following best practice corporate governance principles. So basically how good the management is doing in terms of the practices they have, corporate governance related practices they have in the firm. And the next one is climate risk shareholder, CRS, we call it. It is the inverse of the environmental score of a firm multiplied by the shareholder score of that firm. And the shareholder scores basically measures a company's effectiveness towards equal treatment of shareholders and the use of anti-takeover devices. And final, our main variable of interest is climate risk CSR, which is the inverse of an environmental score of a firm multiplied by the CSR strategy score of that firm. And CSR strategy basically score reflects a company's practices to communicate that it integrates the economic, social, and environmental dimensions into its day-to-day decision-making processes. So basically, these are all our 4 main proxies, and the data coming from Refinitiv compensators. Moving on to our control variables. So we have got corporate governance related control variables. We use board size, log of number of members in the board of a firm. Corporate governance committee is dummy equal to 1 if a firm monitors the board functions through a corporate governance committee. We have got board diversity, percentage of women or a representative from a foreign culture on board. And then we have got CEO duality, percentage of firms where CEOs simultaneously chair the board. So these are the corporate governance related control variables in our model. And then we have got the other firm related control variables: company size, leverage, EBIT, sales growth, asset growth, CapEx, ROA, and standard deviation of ROA. Company size is basically the book value of total assets and the natural log of that. and leverages long-term debt to book value of assets, EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, very standard measures. Sale growth is a growth from previous year to current year. Same is for the asset growth. CapEx is capital expenditure divided by book value of assets, and return on assets and standard deviation of that return of assets. These are our descriptive statistics. We have got total 14,836 observations, and there are different numbers, mean, minimum, max, and standard deviation. And we show in the paper that they are quite much in line with the literature. So moving on to our first result, our baseline result, which is the governance of climate risk and firm value of global firms with no fixed effects. So in the first one, we do not include any kind of year or country level effects. So we simply have our dependent variable top and skew, and we have got our main variables of interest, climate risk governance, and climate risk management, climate risk shareholder, and climate risk CSR. And you can see that they are all very strongly positively related with the firm value. So what does it mean? It means that if the firm is good at governing or good at governing the climate risks, or if their climate risk is so low that they do not need any strong governance, that basically leads to increase in their firm value. Yeah, and then we have got all this corporate governance related control variables. Most of them are insignificant. So basically, sort of, we do not really need them in the model anyway, but just to make sure that we are not missing out on any important variables, we include them in the regression. And then we have got company size, ROA, and so on. These are rest of the control variables. And as I said before, we haven't got any time fixed effects, firm fixed effects, or country level fixed effects in this model. So moving on to our next. So what we do, we move step by step. We include in the same regression, but we include time and firm fixed effects. So I do not show the controls here. I only show the main variables of interest here. So again, our dependent variable top and skew, and our other main variables of interest are still holding the sign and the statistical significance. And they are pretty consistent in terms of magnitude as well. And then we go further. We also include the country fixed effects in this model. One thing which happens basically is that when you include the country fixed effects, the elements of the governance, they remain still positive and significant, but our broader, the main variable of interest, which is governance of climate risk, that turns negative. So it shows basically that something going on. There are some differences within countries that basically, driving these results. And as I motivated before, that we find out in our empirical analysis that this basically difference is coming from when we separate out European firms from the non-European ones. So following the theory and the intuition that Europe is much ahead in terms of targeting the climate challenges, their Green Deal and carbon trading emissions, and many financial disclosure related regulations. So we find that basically if we make a subsample of European firms, our climate risk governance becomes again positive, and the main result is basically our main results are being driven by the European firms. And we of course include all of the controls and all the fixed effects in our model too. And for the same regression, but for non-European firms now, and we see that basically the main proxy is negative. but all of the sub elements of that are still positive for non-European firms. And our sample is bigger for non-European firms, particularly because of the US firms being the biggest country in our sample. Okay, so these were our main results. Then we have got robustness checks. So we basically include a Liouville estimator. The Liouville approach is particularly suitable for addressing endogeneity concerns because it constructs instruments based on hard moments, assuming the errors are heteroscedastic but are not correlated with the exponential variables. And this leads to more consistent and robust results. We have got other robustness checks as well that explain a bit later. So let me show you the repetition of the slide. Let me show you the results based on this Liouville 2012 estimator. So we use our full sample here, 14,836 observations, and our results basically remain consistent. The statistical significance goes down a little bit, but basically the economic significance becomes even stronger, particularly for the elements of governance. And we basically reject the null hypothesis of under-identification by Kleiberg and Papp RKLMS test. And we do not reject the null hypothesis that they are over-identifying conditions are valid for our equation. So basically these diagnostics the meet the criteria of that this is a good way of addressing the endogeneity problem in our model. Next, we do another GMM instrumental variable regression to address the endogeneity issues. And we use two instruments. One is natural disasters in a country, and the other one is climate stringency in a country. And we argue that exposure to natural disasters, for example, frequent or severe floods, hurricanes, and wildfires, can significantly influence the development of climate risk governance in a country. And Ripple et al. 2023, they highlight that we are entering untouched territory in terms of climate risks, further reinforcing the urgent need for innovative governance strategies to address these escalating threats. Similarly, countries with more stringent environmental regulations tend to see firms adopting stronger climate risk governance practices as they are compelled to align their strategies with the regulatory requirements and emerging climate challenges. So basically, we argue that these are good enough instruments that we can use to provide causation in our analysis. These are the two-stage regressions, and then we also have this diagnostic tests like this under-identification test, the null hypothesis of Anderson-Kinen correlated LM statistic is that the equation is under-identified, so we reject this null hypothesis by quite strong statistical significance. The equation is not under-identified, and this is a weakly identified test, Craig, Donald, Wald F statistic. If the value is greater than the critical value, it means that the equation is not weakly identified. And Sargan statistic, as I said before, is similar to the Liouville test that the over-identifying restrictions are valid. So we do not reject that null hypothesis, meaning that the equation is not over-identified either. And again, as I said before, that the results are very, very strong, both statistically and economically, and holding our baseline, confirming our baseline results. We use the alternative proxies for firm value. So we use adjusted Tobin skew, modified Tobin skew, return on assets, and market to book. So what is adjusted Tobin skew is calculated as the market value of equity plus liquidating value of preferred stock plus book value of net long-term debt plus short-term liabilities minus short-term assets divided by the book value of assets. So this is another measure of firm value, which is called adjusted Tobin skew. And a slightly different way of measuring Tobin skew is called modified Tobin skew. This is a definition of modified. Market value of equity is still there, plus book value of net long-term debt minus cash divided by book value of assets. And I show the results of all these different measures of firm value here. So the first one is adjusted Tobin skew. The results are, for this one, it's slightly differs. It's more like non-European firms kind of results, but other proxies still remain positive and significant. ROA is a similar results, and with market to book, we take away the significance of this climate risk governance, but other results are consistent. And finally, our modified Tobin skew results, they are all similar to our non-European firms' results. Finally, we instead of the firm value, like all the measures I showed you, like Tobin skew, adjusted Tobin skew, modified Tobin skew, ROA, market to book, we also look into the firm efficiency, because one can argue that there is noise in the firm value, because firm value does not really take into account the intangibles and other things into analysis. So it's SFA, or firm efficiency, is a better measure. SFA stands for stochastic frontier analysis. This is one of the ways of measuring firm efficiency. And we use Nguyen and Swanson 2009 to implement the firm efficiency. And this is how basically we run the equation to calculate the efficiency. And then, when you run this equation, then you basically predict the technical efficiency by BC and JLMS methods. There are two different methods we use in this paper, and we come up with the efficiency score. And then we run basically the same analysis, but now the dependent variable is efficiency score instead of a Tobin skew or other measures of firm value. Again, our results remain very, very consistent statistically. Because of the different units, the economic significance is slightly different, but overall, they are very consistent and very strong results based on the full sample. Okay, so that's all I had in terms of the results. So what we show in this paper, we show that the effective governance of climate risk correlates positively with firm value as measured by Tobin skew and other measures. And when we delve deeper into the governance elements, we assess multiple dimensions, including management practices, shareholder engagement, and corporate social responsibility strategies. And our analysis shows that they positively contribute towards the firm value. We observe a negative relationship between climate risk governance and firm value, especially for non-European and US firms. And our robustness checks basically validate the credibility of our results. So what we basically argue, sort of policy implications that, in terms of have broader positive impact on firm value, the non-European firms need to follow the European Union firms or European Union sort of regulations, and need to introduce new regulations such as CSRD, SFDR, and so on to generate positive impact for the firm value. So these regulations are not bad for the firms. They basically lead to positive firm value, which can have positive impact on the investors who are investing into those firms. So our findings also emphasize the importance of tailoring climate risk governance strategies to regional contexts as businesses navigate the complex landscape of climate-related challenges. Understanding the regional variations in the effectiveness of governance practices becomes imperative, as we show in our paper that there are regional differences in terms of the impact. So future research could delve deeper into the specific mechanism through which EU firms achieve positive outcomes, providing a roadmap for businesses and policymakers globally. For example, the integration of climate metrics in corporate governance. EU firms might have successfully integrated climate risk matrices into their corporate governance frameworks, exerting influence over decision-making process. So in a sense, our study underscores the dynamic interplay between regional regulatory environments, corporate governance practices, and firm value, offering valuable insights for shaping a sustainable and resilient future for business across the globe. I think that's basically all from my side, and I look forward to receiving your comments and questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sajid. I think this is a typical well-organized presentation. So we have heard everything about a piece of research from theory, from econometric models, and robustness test, a battery of different tests, and policy implications. So I have no question about the importance of this topic. I already see a hand up, so I will immediately open the floor to colleagues. Charles, so you are the first. Charles.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. My first impression as you was presenting this piece of research was the high significance on all the climate risk variables. And I can't help but think that, and you didn't show a correlation matrix, but my suspicion is that all those climate risk variables are highly correlated. So in a sense, if each one of them are being treated as a quote unquote independent variable, they are basically almost proxies for each other. What I would have liked to have seen, and if I was a referee, this is what I would ask, so just be blunt, is perhaps a principal component analysis in which all those climate risk variables, are bunched together and see what kind of weights are applied on them. And then, call it an index, call it a climate risk index if you like, and then use that as a dependent variable. So that is my, as a quote unquote independent variable. Use in other words, the principal components of all those 4 climate risk variables as an index in the regression themselves. So that is just my, a comment really. Thanks. Let me.
But thank you very much, Charles. So, Sajid, are you willing to respond immediately?
Yes. Thank you for this comment. I think it's a very useful comment. We have got correlations in that. I think you probably can see my screen in the paper. So they are. I think probably the strongest one is between the correlation is between CSR management and CSR shareholders, which is basically, CSR and CRM, 0.668. Otherwise, it's all about like less than 0.5. And I mean, intuitively, they are supposed to capture different things, but I think that could be interesting further analysis as well to run the PCA just to provide yet another evidence that we are capturing everything. But thank you for this comment. So I'm just noting down everything.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing to the previous question, and you also answered something, but I think you did not include all 4 indicators in one regression. And that is important. Although they are overlapping, they are correlated, but you didn't put them together in one estimation, did you? I did not see that.
No, we might have tried some, but we don't.
But still, if you construct, because those 4 things are probably they are reflecting one aspect of climate risk management, but maybe there is you can construct an overall something, and that is Charles's comment.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we have quite a few hands. So Sandrine, welcome. Yes. Sandrine. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Professor Hongo. I have some question. I have noticed that you didn't use fixed effect for the industry, so maybe I didn't follow, and you consider firms for the same industries. So I don't know if you can explain these. And the second question is, when you did your robustness check with the efficiency score using the stochastic frontier analysis, I know that the stochastic score are between 0 and 1. So this means that when you use them, I mean, when you make a regression, you should use a probit model to take into account the fact that they are bounded. The scores are bounded. So I don't know if you take it into account or how did you manage it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this interesting comment as well. Yeah, we didn't use fixed effects for industries. I think we probably do not need when we are already using the firm fixed effects. And we are using country fixed effects as well. You might have noticed in the problem when you put too many fixed effects. Let me show you the slides. So when you put too many fixed effects, then the significance, I don't have it here, sorry, in the slides. The significance of all the controls go away, basically, because you are controlling everything. I mean, we can basically interchange, and it might not be a good idea to do everything at once. So maybe we can replace fixed effects for industries instead of firms, for example, or something like that. Because if you keep on controlling, then significance of all the controls go away. But we can check that as well.
But in fact, my question was maybe it would have been better to consider industry fixed effects, because I think that in the literature it's usually what is done, because there are some specificities related to the industry, and maybe it would have been interesting to consider it.
Yeah, industries are different. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's true. So some industry might have different impacts or different level of climate risk governance compared to others. Yeah, and for robustness for SFA, you're right. We just simply used the fixed effect regression. We probably have used maybe Torbit or something because it's bounded. So we use Torbit anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good discussions.
Thank you.
And I saw Florian. Are you the next?
Yes, hi. Thank you for the presentation. I want to ask questions about the proxies that you're using to kind of measure or represent climate risk management or governance. So the first question is, how would you define the different components, or what do you understand as climate risk management practices? What is a climate risk CSR strategy, and how are they different from one another? More from a theoretical perspective, and then you explain to us how you measure them, like using these using the data of Refinitiv. Here, I want to ask, what is the environmental score of a firm? I think you haven't explained that. Does it just mean the environmental performance? And maybe you could then once again explain the logic behind multiplying this with corporate governance, for example. Because as far as I know, transition risk or climate risk indexes in data sets like those provided by Refinitiv, they go back a couple of years, but I think you did a regression for data starting from 2008 maybe or 6, and back in the day the understanding of climate risk was very different from what we understand as climate risk today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so basically that's what one of our innovations in the paper, that we do not really use their definition, so we define ourselves. So the environmental score is the environmental performance. So it's simply the performance measure which you can find from the data. And then we basically take the inverse of that, and we say that if the environmental performance is very high, so it means they are doing very well in terms of the taking into account the climate change issues. And if you take the inverse of that, basically you can simply say that it's just the climate risk. It's just a way of it's a mathematical way of just defining it. And
can I add something to that? The challenge here is that environmental scores, they encompass many more aspects than just climate, right? They might be about pollution, about water, about biodiversity. Maybe climate has not been regarded as the main topic in this proxy or in this measurement at all. So it might kind of bias your whole analysis, because maybe climate is just 1/3 or 1/4 in this environmental score. So in the end, there's different aspects that go into it, which might be a challenge.
I mean, of course, it's a challenge with all these broader measures. The more you go into the specific elements, you can filter out the further detail. But in this paper, basically, we just take it as a proxy for the inverse of the environmental score, environmental performance score as a measure of climate risk. I do agree that there are other things in it. We tend to basically think that if there's a biodiversity or this kind of things, they're all coming from the like climate related thing. So we do not. It's not ESG. We do not take ESG together. We only take the E part together. We only take the E part, so that we take so what we argue that is basically all E is climate related. But I agree that if we go further deep, perhaps we can tease out even further the specificities of this thing.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And how is climate risk management different from climate risk strategies, for example?
Yeah, so these are the three different components of governance. So they basically, the strategy is that, what kind of strategy they have to implement this kind of decision making. So it's more like policy related stuff. That's a strategy. This is my company strategy that I'm going to do this thing. And then management is basically kind of implementing that, whether that strategy is being implemented or not. So there are differences across these things. So they all put together, they form the overall governance. This is how they define the data in Refinitiv.
Okay, get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for questions and answers. So we have for the next hand, I'm very sorry. Can you help me how to pronounce your...
Me. Is it me?
Yeah, it's you. Sorry.
It's me. Okay, my last name is very complicated. We can just say Ellie. It's easier that way.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see the... Ellie, right?
Yes, Ellie.
Yeah,
yes.
So please,
Yes.
So it's a long family name. Please come in, please.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. Professor Sajid, thank you very much for your brilliant presentation. I congratulate you for your very solid paper. I have some question for you, and will write to you, for that. The only question I'm going to ask you today is, well, is there any specific region on which you focus in this paper?
We focus on the global. Basically, we take whatever is available in the data sets. So it's a global 66 countries. And we do the further analysis of Europe versus non-Europe. I have got some data analysis on US as well, but our main focus is Europe versus non-Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. I will write to you because I have a very special interest in this topic, and I will contact you to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. Thank you. I look forward to your email.
But that's why we have this, right? So it's good to make some further discussions and connections. So I saw Jeffrey is here. Jeffrey, please. Yeah.
Hello, thank you. Chaudhry, thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed the topic and the work that you have done. I have one question is regarding the measure. I would like to see the slide where you were before, because I wanted to say something about the measure of this very one. So the way you have measured climate risk governance is the if you multiply environmental score with corporate governance. So in that case, if you have a firm with higher risk than lower corporate governance, then you have another firm with the opposite
the other way around,
figure. So when you multiply these, you have the same number. So given that corporate governance is much more bigger than in terms of the elements, because corporate governance of a firm is broader. You have the accounting side, you have the political side, and all of that, and which is much more regulated than that. So do you think if you separate these firms, for example, firm with higher of corporate governance, then separate the ones with where you have different results? Because I'm just thinking you might see that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. So I think this is one of the things that as I tried to explain a little bit before, that if you have high risk, lower governance is the same as if you have low risk and high governance. So we treat them equal. But yeah, you have got interesting point. So you are saying that if you separate them based on their governance score, you will find different results.
No, my point is, since if you multiply say firms with higher corporate governance score with lower environmental score, then you have another set of firm with the opposite relationship, which means in this time corporate governance is lower and environmental score is higher. You will have different scores for these two firms.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So even if their overall score is same, but you are saying that separating them might have a different results for them.
Yes, you might have different results given that corporate governance is much more broader than environmental score. That's my point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I can check that. I can check that. I think that would further tease out the differences between these two. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So thanks. And of course, I see Jaydeep. Jaydeep, please, yeah.
Thanks, Sajid, for your presentation. I'm a bit so the way you describe those variables, I'm still thinking about them. So it just looks to me, why do you call it the inverse of the environmental score? And basically, what you're doing is G divided by E, or some different everything. So it's basically you've taken this ESG scores from the different columns and pillars, and you've divided everything by E, essentially the E score. And so it's a kind of a normalization in a sense, from what I understand, but that's at least from the description on your slide and from your explanation. So if that's the case, then what you're saying is it's kind of a risk-adjusted governance score. So it's a normalization based on risk. And how that reflects the governance of climate is a bit difficult to sort of like pick up. And I think the biggest problem with that is the fact that your sign flips in the most important of your 4 regressions in your table. So when you sort of include some 1 or 2 controls, and I think the key point really comes down to what Sandrine was saying about industry, because in the end, it's if you want to think about climate risk governance or climate risk performance, it means if there's 2 firms within an industry which have the same kind of exposure, which they should, then you'll end up with, it doesn't have to be industry fixed effects necessarily, but even if you were to sort of use the industry exposure as a kind of a proxy or an instrument, rather than the firm level exposure to climate risk. There's so many measures for it now. You can actually pick them up apart from the ones which you've stated here. Then you might start getting a picture of like what the governance is about. So because the governance with respect to climate risk should be simply the score of the one column out of those environmental principles where they talk about their effectiveness in dealing with environmental issues. And so I'm sure that score exists because there's a requirement to disclose that kind of information now. So I just think that it may be a bit premature to call this governance or management for that matter. So if you had an alternative measure, like for example, exposure, like a beta, or you had, like a lot of people have done papers with where they've run physical exposure versus stock market exposure, all kinds of different exposures to climate. Those are climate risk measures, but they still don't reflect governance because, for example, by default, some industries will have higher risk and others will have lower risk. So I think it might be a little bit it might be worth considering whether this variable construction of kind of a risk-adjusted governance score should be considered. And also whether actually 1/E represents risk is another separate question, because in the end, in order to show that it represents risk, you need to see that 1/E regressed on, let's say, stock returns has some meaning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your very interesting and detailed the comment. So basically, I mean, where we are coming from basically is, indeed, different industries have a different, climate risk. So basically, this is what we are trying to convey the message that if you are, if you are riskier, you need to, make your governance even tighter. This is what we are trying to say. So it doesn't really matter where you stand, in terms of risk. If you are, extremely, your exposure is too high to the climate, then probably you need to do even much more than to compare to the firm, which is not posing that much risk. But I think your point regarding this industry exposure to climate risk is, I think that would even further clarify this or strengthen our results in terms of that. Regarding this comment, there is risk-adjusted governance. Probably I was really not really clear to really convey the message. I think it's probably you need to do a bit more. I mean, already the research or literature which is kind of confirming this thing that it leads to if you have a higher climate risk, it is not good for your stock value or your returns for stocks. So we are basically taking those as a baseline and then building upon that literature to really show something extra. And that's the idea that this is we are normalizing it, that is like risk-adjusted governance basically.
Can I just come back on that though, because sure. I'm a bit basically I'm sort of being accepting of the idea that this actually reflects risk, which I'm not necessarily 100% sure that it does. But if I were to think about it in a different sense, it's actually what it is a relative governance score, not even a risk-adjusted governance. So it's basically as in how well you're doing in G relative to E or S.
Yeah.
Because the E score is actually just these are all normalized scores.
Yeah.
So for example, it's between 0 and 1 or 1 and 4, whatever that number is that you've taken. So they're all on a standardized scale. So then that interpretation becomes a little bit more vague, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this comment. I think it's a good point to think about, and we will try to see that what can be done. But yeah, thank you this point.
Yeah. I also found this is very, very relevant. And by the way, we are talking we are discussing among experts, and Jaideep is teaching risk management, and so that's probably, so we have another. Matt.
Oh, hello. Thank you very much for excellent presentation.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the session. And starting with the last part of the discussion, was talking about the industry specificity in terms of environmental scores. So far, I know that Refinitiv has already considered this industry specificity in their ESG score. Based on industry, they put different weights for environment, for social and governance. Alternatively, we have to consider SASB data, if that's the case. My main point is the second one is regarding the innovation of formulating the new variable. It's quite interesting. To validate this innovation, you could think about rep risk data or Sustainalytics data, because they directly capture the risk dimension of environment, social, and governance, whereas Refinitiv only considers the performance aspect. It's theoretically fine, because the higher the performance should be lower the risk, and lower the performance should be higher the risk. That is theoretically valid. To make it empirically valid, maybe you can consider about rep risk, at least a subsample rep risk data and Sustainalytics data. That's my plan. Thank you very much.
Sorry, the second one was which one?
Sustainalytics, and all rep risk. Yeah.
Okay, Sustainalytics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it available?
It's available on Bloomberg.
Okay, Bloomberg.
Yeah. And
good.
Also WRDS if subscribed.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Thanks, everybody. So now I think I can ask my questions. So I actually have, I'm actually thinking about two things here. First of all, in terms of the policy implications, you did emphasize that actually when you look at EU firms versus non-EU firms, you found different results. And that negative result is actually very interesting. So, and when you say, non-EU firms should learn from EU firms, etc., but before we say that, what causes that negative relationship between climate risk, governance management, and firm value or efficiency? So what did they do wrong in terms of their practice or governance, so that we know how people can improve? And can you? That's my first question. I think this is important, because by the end of the day, we need to think about what are the implications. So my second question is all about your econometrics. So of course you started with the, just the normal, panel data fixed effect model, and then you focused on some tests to reduce the endogeneity problem. So you mentioned the two things. One is the Lobo. I cannot pronounce it, but that paper. So you said you followed the Lobo 2012 procedure, and but you didn't explain what the procedure is. And for me, since I'm doing empirical as well, so I'm very interested in knowing. It looks like an IV. By looking at your model performance statistics, but maybe you can explain a little bit about that. In addition, you did the GIM. And particularly interesting is that you, in your GIM estimation, normally we use our own, model variables in the model, but in your GIM, you introduced the two external IVs. So how did you do that? How did you do that?
Okay, sure.
That's my question.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the comments. I think the first comment about that what non-EU firms do wrong that leads to the low firm value. I think it's more theoretical question, and I mean one tend to think basically that just because of the their focus on the climate risk governance, they do not focus too much on the climate risk governance. That's why they lead to the lower value. I mean, investors don't really prefer those kind of firms, and that lead to the lower value. I mean, this is one of the straightforward, I think, the answer I can give. For your lieu bill and GMM, so basically lieu bill is generates it's a technique which is given by Liubel, I think was Martin Liubel or something, 2012. They basically say there is a second best solution. If you can't really find the good instruments, then you can go for Liubel, and Liubel basically generates the lag variable itself. So it's like a GMM. And creates a lag itself, and it accounts for the heteroscedasticity better. So that's basically the theoretical idea behind. In Stata, they have built all this, code. So you can simply do it in Stata very easily. So it's they have made a code in Stata already. But the theoretical idea is that it generates the lag itself, so that the persistence and the other things which could potentially lead to endogeneity, they are reduced in this variable. For the GMM instrumental variable regression, it's Arleno 1987. They basically show that you can run simple system GMM, and you can also run a GMM as instrumental variable regression. So you basically add your instruments into the equation, and then it will take into account. They will use as instead of your explanatory variables, and meet all these instruments requirements which you need. So it's a simple in Stata, you can put in the equation these instruments within the equation, and then it does the job for you. But the idea is basically that it takes into account all this endogeneity issues by looking into the instruments. It's Arleno 1987 paper. This is what they say.
Yeah, I understand what you are saying, but my question was, so normally we use GM, we do not need the extra IVs. So we use the lagged term of the variables that are already in the model. So my question was, did you add those the two IVs into the model, and then you run them together with the lagged observations of the variables already, right? Great. So my next extension or question is, what are the differences between Liubel 2012 and GM?
Yeah, so was the simple GM or GM?
Very, very similar.
Yeah. So they look at very similar simple GMM and Liubel. Basically, Liubel takes into account extra heterogeneity. So, for example, I give some explanation here in the because it constructs it based on higher moments. So this is basically the one of the things here. They construct based on the higher moments, assuming the errors are heteroscedastic and are not correlated with explanatory variables. So this is what additional thing they add, that they are higher moments, not only simply looking at the mean or variance. They take into account. I do not know the detail, to be honest. This is beyond my econometric skills, but I take their argument. When they present that, they take into account this higher moments, and assuming that the errors are heteroscedastic, and there's no correlation basically between errors.
Yeah, thank you very much. But I think it's very interesting to look into Liubel something and see what is going on. Very interesting, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do we have more questions? No? So as I told you, Sajid, we have a lot of experts here
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
of course, yeah.
audience. So, and the topic itself is so popular. And I think, yes, the paper, I agree, the paper is already solid. I was also thinking about maybe you can think about other theories, for example, risk management theories, for example, agency theories. So, but whatever. So, to me, there are more underlying theories than the two that you mentioned. And since we do not have more hands that I cannot see, and Sajid, thank you very much for your contribution to the seminar, and I hope the paper is going well. I gave you maybe half minutes to finish.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the comments were really, really useful. As I said before, that is one of the things I find your global, finance seminar series, that they are very good comments. There are colleagues from all over the world joining and presenting, giving their views. I think I have presented this paper once before as well, but I didn't really get this, diverse and really thorough views on that. So thank you for inviting me to this one and giving me the chance to present paper. And thank you everybody for giving your thoughts and comments. I think it will really improve the paper. And hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you so much. So thank you everybody for your contribution, and I hope you at least got something and take something away. And I'll see you next week. And thanks, Jadid, again for your support.